Okay, so we should see the record button in the top left-hand corner, little flashing red button of our Zoom screens, and that indicates that we are recording. And so I'll go back to my screen share. So as I said before we started recording, the majority of the time today is going to be spent in a panel with folks who not only have taken 4501 but also completed 4502, which I think for almost all of you in this class is now a requirement for graduation. And the idea was actually suggested by a number of my former 4501 students who are in 4502, who are discovering that a lot of the decisions that they had made in 4501 that seemed to make a lot of sense at the time were actually causing a lot of problems for them in 4502, a lot of need to like redesign from scratch. And so the suggestion was, well, why don't we get a bunch of us together and give, some sort of seminar, some sort of panel for the 4501 students, so they at least have a sense of, what's coming down the pipeline and potential pitfalls. And so you guys will hear today in about 10 minutes. I've asked these people to show up about 11:15, so that's about 10 minutes from now. We'll put them kind of on the spot and do a Q&A. But what I did want to cover before then was some housekeeping items. So mostly this is just a big list of things that I need to tell you guys so that everybody is kind of on the same page with respect to what we're doing in the next 2 weeks, because it's going to be different than what we have been doing. So the first thing that I want to mention is the cell phone survey. I did send out the cell phone survey. It looks like, at least according to my cell phone, that it's been received by everybody. So if you feel so inclined, it's the same usual 2 questions. What went well today? What can I improve? And then the third question asks about the panel. And it's just, was looking ahead to EML4502 beneficial to your EML4501 design process? And then if so, how was it helpful? I know from the 4502 students that, having this kind of retrospective, like preview of what's about to happen, they thought it would be beneficial, but they're obviously after, they're in a world post 4501. So I'm also interested in kind of your impression of whether this is a good use of class time or not. So if it is, we can keep doing it in the future. And if not, then we'll scrap it and put something else in its place. But anyway, the cell phone survey is there, and I'm interested in your feedback on whether what you hear today is helpful or not. So please answer the questions if you feel so inclined. The second thing is design review 1 and 2, which is, those actually start next week. And so instead of having just a normal class session where, we have activities or I'm delivering a lecture or some content, what we'll do in the design reviews is we'll get one team at a time. There's 7 of you guys, 7 teams. So one team at a time, myself, and then at least one of the TAs or graders in a basically a breakout room in a Zoom meeting. So we're all going to be there together, but it'll just be your team and then me and one of the graders TAs, and not the rest of the class. So a little bit different than the format that we did on Tuesday. And what we'll do is have you guys give us, and these sessions, by the way, are about 30 minutes long. So what we'll do is have you guys give us, like a 10-minute kind of introduction to your design. So the hope is that you would have, you guys should have the preliminary design report finished and submitted. I think that's due this Sunday, 11:59 p.m. So whatever you submitted for your CAD model, for example, for the PDR, is where we'll start with the design review. So you'll give us about a 10-minute kind of overview, your hedgehog concept, the key features of your design, and kind of walk us through the features, and then after you guys are done giving us your pitch and your presentation, we will start to give you some suggestions and feedback for things that you might look at to improve as we get ready for the final oral presentations, which are in the last week of the class. So this is a way to sort of kick the tires on your designs, get a couple of sets of eyes who have not seen it before to look at it, and give you some suggestions and tips and ideas for how you might further improve it, so that when you guys get up in front of the panel of engineers at the end of class, you guys have a really amazing presentation and a really amazing design that blows them out of the water. So that's our intent, is not to be critical, but to be as helpful as possible in these design reviews. And so the way that I want you guys to sign up for them is I've created in Canvas. It's probably going to be a little bit hard to see because this is such a small picture. So let me see if I can bring this up in my Canvas without, yeah. Okay, I'm not sure this is going to be any better, but let me just switch over here to my Canvas and show you at least what it looks like from my perspective, and hopefully that's easier to see than in PowerPoint. So what I've done, here's July, and let's move forward 1 month to August because this actually bleeds into August. So here's Tuesday the 28th, which is next week. And so you guys can see here all of these sort of, hopefully you can see all of these grayed out boxes. Oh, and it looks like somebody's already reserved one. Oh, no, maybe not. It's funny. Why does that one look different? Anyway, so there's these grayed out boxes. There's going to be 5 on Tuesday, and then there's going to be let's see, 2 on Thursday, right? Because there's 7 groups, so 5 plus 2 is 7. Okay, so I've got the right number there. And they do happily take place all during normal class periods. And again, they're going to be 30 minutes long. So 9:30 to 10, and then 10 to 10:30, and then 10:30 to 11, and then there's a little bit 15-minute break, and then we'll pick it up again at 11:45, or sorry, 11:15 to 11:45, and then 11:45 to 12:15. And so, like, again, on Tuesdays, we're supposed to meet from 9:30 to 12:15. So these all fit, thankfully, within the class period. In previous semesters, we've had to do them outside of normal class periods, and that was difficult for some people that had other things scheduled, but I managed to fit them all into normal class periods. And then on Thursday, it's going to be 11 to 11:30, and then we'll take a little break, and then 11:45 to 12:15. So if you guys get together in your groups and sign up for the first design review, it's first come, first serve. So whichever group gets there first and signs up for a slot first, that's your group. And that's going to be your first design review session with me, and again, either Brandon or one of the undergraduate graders, and we'll go through and kind of kick the tires and give you some pointers. So the first thing that I want to ask everybody to do is to coordinate with your groups and have somebody from each group please sign up for one of these slots, either on the 28th or the 30th. Those are design review 1 slots. And then what we'll end up doing is give you guys like a week to implement the changes that we recommend in the design reviews. And then we'll have a second design review, which is going to be the exact same format. So it's going to be 30 minutes, me and either a grader or TA in a Zoom meeting with you going through your revised design. And that's going to happen the first week of August. So you don't have to do this, but if you sign up for a particular time slot on the 28th, try, if possible, to sign up for the same time slot on August 4th. And vice versa, right? So if you sign up for a slot on the 30th, try to grab one on the 6th. So that'll give everybody, if you guys manage to do that, that'll give everybody like a full week between when we give you the feedback in design review 1 and when we expect to see the results in design review 2. So anyway, so hopefully that's clear. Are there any questions about kind of how the design reviews run, or what I'm asking you to do in terms of signing up? Nope. Okay, so I think we're good there. All right, so let me jump back into my nope PowerPoint. Okay, there it is, and I'm noticing that some of our panelists are showing up, which is great. Okay, just two or three more things. I've already pretty much covered the design review procedure. Again, it's 30 minutes, and we are going to give you guys about 10 minutes to present, and then we'll give you kind of a review and suggestions and so forth for the final 20 minutes, and these will run 30 minutes apiece. For those of you who have not signed up for a particular session, I debated this quite a bit. I thought, well, maybe we should have class anyway, and maybe Brandon can run it or one of the graders can run it. But you guys have got plenty to do, and so I figured you guys would, just on your own time, kind of coordinate and meet and continue working on your final design report and the final deliverables. So instead of having some sort of organized class on the 28th, the 30th, the 4th, and the 6th, with the exception of the 30 minutes that you guys will be in the design reviews, both for design review 1 and design review 2. I won't have a formal scheduled class. So you guys are, with the exception of coming to the design reviews, which you'll sign up for, you guys are off the hook for the next 2 weeks in terms of having a formal class meeting. We'll still hold office hours and be available by appointment, but there won't be any formal class meetings for those 4 days, so that we can concentrate on the design reviews. Okay, Lauren's here. Go. Great. So almost done. So the next element is design review contracts. And so in the past, like in the fall, we would do the design reviews, and we would tell student teams like what we thought that they should work on or improve. And then I'd come back a week later only to discover that none of the things that I had suggested were actually implemented, and I would have to suggest all of the same things all over again. And so it was basically like a wasted week of time. And so what I implemented in the spring, which actually worked really well, is this concept of design review contracts. And so what we'll do as we're going through the design review is record the things that we suggest. And those will be embodied in it's effectively like a written, and I use the word contract very loosely, but it's a written contract of sorts that will actually be an assignment that's posted for each individual group in Canvas. And what we will do for design review 2 is to pull up the design review contract from design review 1, and we'll start by having you tell us how you addressed all the things that we suggested to improve your design. And then there'll be another round of that, which I'll explain later when we get to design review 2. And that keeps it makes sure that the time is well spent, and it also keeps you guys kind of more accountable to at least think about the changes that we suggest. If you think that our suggestions are dumb, you don't have to implement them, but you at least have to let us know that you thought about what we suggested. And so that'll be embodied in those design contract assignments. And those will actually be worth a couple of points in Canvas if you address everything in the contract from design review 1. When we meet for design review 2, there's a couple of completion points available for that. And then the final thing that I wanted to throw out there was the greater TA preference for evaluation. So this is something that has been suggested by our current teaching team, the current graders and TAs. So their idea is to have the same person, to the extent that we can, to have the same person be present in both of your design reviews, and to evaluate your preliminary design report and your final design deliverables, your final design report and oral presentations. And we'll see how this goes. I think this was suggested. I'm kind of looking to Lauren here, who just signed in. I think we actually thought about this last semester and decided not to implement it. But this class is small enough, and the TAs seem to be really gung-ho to do this. And so what they suggested is that the same person be responsible for all, the same grader be responsible for all of those evaluations, with at least the potential benefit of they become really familiar with your particular design and can do like kind of a deep dive and drill down into some details that probably wouldn't be noticed or commented on if your PDR were graded by one person, your design review were done by two other people, and your final design report were graded by a third or a fourth person. So the idea is to essentially assign a grader or a TA to each of the teams and have that person follow you guys from here to the end so that you get sort of the same set of eyes who knows all of the details of your design and can kind of follow you all the way to the end. So again, this is sort of experimental. I'm not sure if this is going to work well or cause problems, but the class is small enough that I think we can give it a try without creating too many problems. So what I will do after class today is send a message to each of the groups asking you to identify your top choices for the grader or the TA that you would like to follow you and evaluate you. And then we'll do our best to try to get those people assigned to you so that from here on out, that's the person that does all of your evaluations. So it might be somebody that you had a good connection with in office hours or somebody that, graded your concept design report, for example, and you thought did a really good and fair job, gave you a lot of good feedback. The reasoning behind who you pick and why is sort of less important than just that you pick a couple of people, maybe a top preference and then a second choice, and then we'll get you connected with those people, and they'll be your people, your grader, your TA moving forward. Okay, so I want to get out of the way and give the panelists kind of a shot to introduce themselves. But before I do that, let me just ask if there are any questions about any of these housekeeping items before we move on to the panel. Okay, so I think we're good. If you guys think of questions in the intervening time between now and next week. Oh, there's one. Okay. So somebody's asking, can we pick me? Can you pick Dr. Traum for the evaluation? Yeah. Yes, but please also pick a grader or a TA as well, because I'm going to be in all the design reviews, and I will grade like a subset of the preliminary design and final design reports, but I definitely can't do all of them. So if you want me to be that person, go ahead and put me down, but also please put down a grader or a TA, because I might not be able to be involved in all of them. Yeah, hopefully that answers that question. Any other questions? Oh, here's another one. Oh, yeah, sure. Okay. So anyway, if you guys have questions that you think of, you can put them in the chat, or you could send me an email. But let me now kind of get out of the way and move on to our 4502 survivors panel, because I know some of these people are like taking their lunch breaks to be here. So let me stop sharing, and probably the best thing is to just let them introduce themselves. So I see we've got, let me just let you guys who are on the panel introduce yourselves, because some of you I know very well, and some of you predate my time at UF. So you guys can just go kind of in any order you like, but maybe introduce yourself, tell us when you took 4501, 4502, maybe what you're doing now, and then we can proceed from there.
Well, I guess I can go first. So I took your class last semester in the spring, and currently I'm a Mech 3J, so that's my experience with that.
Hi, my name's Joseph. I took Mech 2 in the fall and Mech 3 in the spring, and I worked on the 3D cancer printer. And right now I'm a TA for Mech 3.
Hey everyone, my name is Otto Ramirez, and I would have my camera if it worked on my laptop, and I took Mech Design 3 in spring 2019. So when it was actually the class, we did the exercise machine for a quadriplegic, and I'm currently working full time as an engineering Edison with GE Appliances.
I'm Lauren Rogers. I took Mech 2 fall 2019 and Mech 3 spring 2020, and I TA'd for Mech 2 in spring. Right now, I'm interning at Rivian remotely.
Okay, I think that's all. We were hoping to have Claire here too, but she had a last minute thing. Okay, so thanks guys for coming and being with us. So I hadn't really kind of thought about any questions or planned anything, but what I wanted to at least start with in this panel is for you guys to just give a sense of, now that you're all 4502 survivors, I guess the big question is, what, I hate to use the word mistakes, but what mistakes or what I'll just say mistakes. What mistakes did you make in 4501 that ended up kind of becoming really problematic in 4502? Like maybe a better way to ask the question is, knowing what you about 4502, what would you've done differently in 4501?
I guess I can take first crack at that. And I think what might be helpful is if I showed our beginning design and our ending design. So do you mind if I share my screen real quick?
Yeah, go ahead. I think I've got screen share enabled.
Okay, can everybody see that okay?
Yes.
Yep.
So on the left, you see our old design, and what we were doing was we were building a 3D bioprinter, and me and Joseph were actually on the same sub-team where we were doing the actuation system, which would like push the pistons, and this was all remote from the printer. And the old design, me and Joseph actually had nothing to do with this. The sub-team they get put with is sort of look of the jaw. But anyway, so we didn't design this on the left, but we started off with this. And the way that it worked was a piezo would push pretty much a syringe. And so it was a pretty simple design. And I think that a mistake that might bite people later on is that when they're taking Mech 2, they're thinking along the lines of, you know, there's like 15 teams, the odds that my team gets selected to like actually be built is slim. So then in the back of their minds, they're just designing something just to get the grade. But once you get to Mech 3, then you realize that, oh wow, this thing is actually going to get built. So then it becomes much more real. So then we had to make a lot of changes. So as you can see, like this design is completely overhauled. You know, we had to add step down systems to make the motion more smooth. We had to add pistons inside of the system. We had to add a spring. And over here, this is plastic, a really expensive piezo. We had to add like stepper motors and lead screws. And so it became much more complex. So in the first 3 or 4 weeks of the class is pretty much a redo of Mech 2 and pretty heavy duty stuff. But to be fair, I would say that our sub team had a lot more work to do than the other teams. And the team that I currently TA for, I would say that they started off with a much more stable system. So they didn't have to completely overhaul their design. It was more of tweaking it and making it better for design for manufacturing and more cost effective. So they didn't have to do a complete overhaul like we did. So I guess my advice would be design with the end in mind, so that when you do get to Mech 3, you don't have to like completely redo the design, and it'll be more of tuning and tweaking, if that makes sense. And then also another thing is I think that Sean will be teaching Mech 3 again, and his style is, so for us he said, okay, so here are potential issues, and here's a potential solve for it, which would be the step down system. And we took his advice, we did it, but his style of teaching is, here's my advice. If you take it, that's great. But also, you guys are ultimately in charge. And if you have a different idea, but you can prove to me that it works, then go for it. It's definitely a good class and a good experience.
I kind of want to add on to what Richard was saying. Another thing that you guys should think about while in Mech 2 is that the students in Mech 3 will most likely have never seen what you're building right now. Some students might not have been in Mech 2 for the same project. So like, I have a student right now in Mech 3 who's working on the patient lift, but in Mech 2, he did the 3D printer. So they'll be looking at this with very new eyes, which is a challenge in many ways, because you have to like quickly learn what the previous team did before you can do design changes. So I think one thing that would be helpful is like really having good documentation. Because when Richard and I were in Mech 3, one of the things we had to deal with in like the first couple of weeks was figuring out how the previous team did their hydraulic actuations before we can implement design changes. So having good documentation can really help the team coming next. And I think that's all I wanted to add.
I'll bounce off of that because I was also going to say documentation is key, because if you're lazy with how you write and if you don't document everything, you're making the next semester hell for whoever is working with your project. So that comes in a lot of different ways. If you have any math behind what you're doing, a lot of times in Mech 3, you're going to validate that and make sure, like you might want to ramp up the strength of something. You might want to improve the precision. So the math you're doing now is not final say. You get into Mech 3 and run with it. Somebody's going to have to check that. And so you want somebody to be able to go back and reference what you did and be able to replicate that. So having clear, concise, and I don't know the word, replicatable information is very, very important. Also in PDM, having really good organization. I know when I was in Mech 3, it was so messy. It was so hard to find parts. Have your fasteners all in their own little subfolder. Make your subsystems very clear what subsystem is what. The assembly we worked with wasn't broken up well into subsystems, so it was a really big mess just to figure out, because you are assigned to a specific subsystem to get the parts that you needed. And even as you go into Mech 3, that's another recommendation. When you're working on your parts and updating things, make sure it's very clear what you're doing that's new in this semester versus what you're doing that's old for Mech 2. So yeah, just documentation is key in every single step of the process, and just think with kindness and mercy on whoever is potentially going to be using this after you.
Yeah, I agree with everything that they said. The biggest issue that we had when we did it and everything was being made was that once again it was DFMA. Our Mech 3 TAs had a really fun time creating some of the parts that were designed in Mech 2 that weren't really considered as to how they were going to be machined in the lab. And even though we have a lot of machinery available to us, they really had to get creative on how they made things. So that was one of the big things. The other thing in Mech 2 that is kind of overlooked sometimes, and I know like I went from grading the drawings when I was a Mech 2 TA. Some people really went heavy into the tolerances, but a lot of people just left the basic default tolerances that were left in the DML templates. And when you get into Mech 3, if it's live, what is it? Noel even told the TAs, he was like, all right, if we have time for the first batch of parts, do the worst possible tolerance you can. And he did that to prove a point, to show how important tolerancing is. So whenever they made those parts, and you know, our class went to go put things together, they weren't working out because we didn't have tight enough tolerances on the parts. So that was really important there. In addition to that, I would say this is more of like once you're in Mech 3, I would say having a lot of, you're going to need to communicate very well, and definitely between the subsystems that are interacting directly with your subsystem, and have very clear I guess, very clear, what's it called? I guess just know what exactly your sub team is going to be working on, and that no another sub team doesn't think, oh well, you know, this is kind of like a gray area between both of our sub teams. Make sure you guys define what you're each going to be working on. Yeah, so I think those were the two big ones. In addition, just stay on top of your bill of materials. Noel probably gives you guys a template for all your bill of materials, but make sure you're updating them, putting links on them, because it is some subsystems you are going to have a lot of parts, and you're going to want to have to stay on top of that.
All right. So it actually just occurred to me as you guys were talking that you guys on the panel, and of course myself as a design instructor, I've got all the context, but the 4501 students might not be entirely familiar with 4502. And so probably worth just spending a moment or two explaining kind of how the process goes. So the idea, and this is subject to change, because I think Dr. Nimi is further modifying 4502 in the future. But the idea is that the paper designs that are generated in 4501, they're in a long semester, in like a fall or a spring, there's usually 24 or 25 designs. This one semester in the summer we'll have 7, but those 25 or so designs get evaluated in the end through oral presentations that you guys will give to this panel that I keep describing, and something like 4 to 6 of those 25 some odd designs are then selected to move forward for prototyping in Mech 3, yeah, Mech Design 3, 4502, and so that's kind of the process we're talking about here. Is the groups in 4503 get your documentation, so your preliminary design report, your final design report is just a package, and that's their starting point, right? So they have to start from the documents that you guys produce in 4501 to inform their designs for 4502. And I think somebody mentioned, I'm not sure if it was Joseph, but somebody mentioned that you might end up working on a different project entirely, a different set of customer needs in 4501 than ultimately you get in 4502. So we've got the 3D bioprinter, we've got the patient lifter. You guys are doing the bioprinter again because it's summer and it's a short semester. But like in the fall, well, I won't reveal what the project is in the fall, but we know what it is, and it's not the patient lifter and it's not the 3D bioprinter, and so something totally different than what you worked on in 4501 might be handed to you as the thing that you have to prototype in 4502, and you might know nothing about it, and so the documentation that comes out of 4501 is super important to get students up to speed. And then maybe the other thing that you guys could talk about is how either, because I know both Griffiths and Nimi do this, how you guys are broken up into teams and groups and subgroups, like how that all works.
Yeah, so the way that Dr. Griffiths broke us up was he had us fill out a survey at the beginning and ask us which different areas we're most comfortable with. So are you comfortable with electronics? Are you comfortable with coding? Are you comfortable with MATLAB? Or are you more comfortable with more structural things like dynamics or SolidWorks, and he just made a list of those, and then you kind of rated them and see how comfortable you are doing these things. And then the way he set up the groups was he tried to make sure that every group had someone who was strong in a specific in a specific field. That way you guys can could get everything working together.
The way that Nimi did that process was he just put us into our sub teams and let us figure it out on our own. So somebody would say, I'm good at SolidWorks. Another person would say, I'm good at drawings. And then we just figure out on our own who would do what.
Yeah, Nimi had he usually split up. So there were 4 groups total in the spring. Each group was a different printer, and then within each group there were 3 sub teams. Each sub team worked on a different aspect of the printer. So there was actuation, extrusion, and something else. And those 3 sub teams had different roles: CAD, engineering analysis, drawings, etc. And each person had to do that role to get their job done. It was like a real job where you have your own job title and you have your own responsibilities. So that's how it worked, or that's how it was structured. But a lot of times how it felt was just, as long as you get the work done, everything was good. Nimi kind of made that clear too. Like, you can overlap roles sometimes to get the job done. So yeah, that's kind of how it's structured. And as far as for the future of Mech 3, every time I ask Nimi, he kind of gives me a different answer. But because when I was in Mech 2, I expected Mech 3 to be us just building it, like just building the printer right away. But when I got there, we had to do design changes. It was kind of like Mech 2 all over again, but a lot more rigorous, because you had to really get it right this time. And then at the end, we were supposed to prototype, but then everything went online. So what I think he's trying to do in the fall semester is the first half of the semester is going to be design changes again, and then the second half of the semester is going to be prototyping. And then in like the spring, he'll do something completely different, where for that same project, the new students will be manufacturing the prototyped designs in mass. I'm not sure if that's exactly right or if that's subject to change. I don't even know if Nimi knows exactly, but that's what I know at the moment.
And one of the biggest things you'll get out from Mech 3 is pretty much how you can get by with not doing much work. Some people did when we took it, but you get out of it whatever you want to put in. So sometimes we were up with Dr. Griffiths even stayed up with us until like 1, 2 in the morning trying to get the exercise machine working. So if you put in the time, you'll get a lot out of it. And then if you don't, you're obviously you're not going to learn as much as you could possibly learn in the class.
Going along with that, I would say be intentional with what you can pick, what device you're on, you can pick what sub team you're on, and then like if you're still under NEMI, you can pick what role. Usually the device in the sub team, that's a little earlier. It's what section you select in the class. So with each step, I would say if your printer gets picked, work on a different one. That way you have the extra challenge. If you're really comfortable with CAD, work more on, there's options for doing controls, or I think it seems like a lot of pressure to do it right. So it might be tempting to say, okay, let me pick the thing I already have an expertise in. But also, since this is a time where it's actually going to be done right, you have really great resources. I know working with Nimi and Rubiano, they have so much knowledge, and so they can help guide you into making the smart decisions that are actually successful in the end. So for me, I was pretty familiar with the design side, but less with the manufacturing or hydraulic side, and that's what I worked on. And I grew so much in application knowledge from doing the things that I wasn't as familiar with. So I would definitely say try to take what you're comfortable and pick the opposite. That way you do have stuff to grow on.
Yeah, and I wanted to, Lauren, I know you might have to leave us a little early here. It's about a minute until 11:45. So before we lose you, I wanted to just give you a chance to, like, if you had any kind of like parting thoughts, like any big picture stuff that you wanted to impart on 4 or 5 students, but before we lose you, now would be a great time to do that.
Oh man, such a broad question. I guess the biggest wisdom, what was it I said last semester that you thought was so funny? Respect yourself.
Yes, I use that with students sometimes. Yeah, you have to respect yourself.
Yeah, so I would just say take a lot of care with what you're doing now. Allow it. I know it was like one of the biggest things that I was proud of coming out of MEC 2 because you're designing something really great right now and something that does have the potential to be built. And that's just so exciting. And from doing two different, I'm in like my second design internship now. I can tell you that the stuff you're learning now is the closest thing you're going to get to application between this and DML. And I guess that's also another thing I would add is recall DML, go back on the website if you need it, utilize that stuff, because understanding how this stuff is going to be built, being really intentional with what you're making, think about the whole process of like, how can I make this as easy to use as possible, as easy to make as possible? How can I make sure this is going to work? That should be your goal, because you want this to be something that you're proud of at the end of the day. You want your teammates to have enjoyed working with you at the end of the day. Treat this as a job. I know you guys might have a little more flexibility with summer. I think a lot of people get resentful with the amount of time that MEC 2 requires, but when you put the time in, it ends up being the most worth it thing you'll ever do in college. So yeah, take it seriously, enjoy your time with your teammates, have fun with it, and be proud. I know when you get to the design review and the poster presentation, getting to show that to your friends and your peers and talk professionally about, I made this and this works, is awesome. So yeah, go Gators.
All right, thank you. All right. Yeah, so I want to just make sure, because yeah, okay, I think she's off now. Did we lose her? Yeah, I think we did. Okay, yeah, she had to go at 11:45, so I wanted to make sure that she had a chance to get a few motivational words in. So we've got, at least in terms of class time, we've got about 30 minutes to go, and we don't have to run through the entire time if we don't have any kind of momentum. But is there anybody in the class that has questions for the remaining panelists? And it could be, anything.
I don't have a question, but I just want to say thank you guys for sharing.
Happy to be here. Thank you.
All right. Any?
I'll go along with what Lauren said. Definitely when you have a project or you're in charge of something, I would really own it. Whenever I was in in my interviews for my full-time position, one of the people I interviewed with, I actually talked about what I worked on in MEC 2 directly, and he loved it. So if you really they care less about the large, the whole project that you guys all got accomplished. They really want to see what you specifically worked on and how you were able to overcome obstacles, how you were able to work as a team with other people to solve these issues. And when you can show them that and show them that you excelled in it, that's something that they're going to be really interested in when you're talking about it.
Yeah, so I probably haven't mentioned it over the summer as much as I would in the fall or the spring, but I did I think touch on it in the very beginning. One of the goals of this class, at least from my perspective, from 4501 by the way, is the war story aspect of it. So at least in my experience, and I've I've been both in academia and worked in industry, mostly at small startup companies, kind of on and off throughout my entire career. So I've been in both worlds. But at least on the industry side, I think what people are really interested in, I call them war stories. I mean, that's literally what they are. It's that time that you had this incredibly challenging, daunting thing that nobody knew how to solve, and you put your mind to it, you got creative with the solutions, you figured something out, and ended up like just making some kind of key fundamental improvement or addition to a design that ultimately made the product successful. And it's those types of experiences that in a conventional lecture-based class, it's really hard to create those types of experiences, right? It's like, oh, I solved problem 4 in the textbook. Oh, but it's in this class, and probably even more so in 4502, you guys will get kind of that analog to the real world, those unsolvable problems that somehow need to be solved, and the solutions to those problems are the war stories that I've talked about in the past, that end up being quite compelling when you go on job interviews. That's one of the reasons, by the way, that the MAE department added 4502 as a required class. I think, and I think that's probably now required for almost all of you. There might be a few folks who don't need it to graduate, but we were getting a lot of feedback both from the companies that hire UF MAE grads, and the alums themselves, that they were sort of lacking this real world experience, the war story part of what you normally get in an undergrad degree program from a capstone design experience. And so we added the build component intentionally, to give you guys that experience. And so what Otto described is exactly, I've taught it at 6 different universities in my career. And every time I teach capstone design, I send the students out, my capstone students, I send them out to go get jobs, and invariably they come back and they say, I spent the entire job interview talking about my capstone project. And I'm really glad. And I hated you, Trom. I hated you when I was in the class, and I hated your class, and I hated everything about it. But in retrospect, it was super beneficial for those job interviews, because that's what the recruiters and what the engineers that I interviewed with wanted to hear about. It was how I solved those real world problems and got those real world experiences. And some of you guys are on the Gator Motorsport team or some of the other competition teams, and so you can get that real world experience from those teams. And yes, some of you guys have done internships, but this is really kind of the common denominator, right? Like everybody now at UF from the MAE department is going to graduate and have this really cool hands-on build experience. And employers know that, and they're going to start, especially once this class of students graduates, and they know that this is a required class, they're going to start asking you guys in your job interviews to talk about your capstone experience. So so I would echo what Lauren said, what Otto said. Just you guys can use this experience to kind of craft yourselves into the engineers that you want to be and that you want to project when you go out onto the job market, and make yourselves really attractive to potential employers. And this is the way that the department allows you to do that. Hopefully you guys will take advantage of it to the greatest extent possible. Are there any other questions for the panelists? You guys have been very, very quiet.
I have a very specific question for Otto. Who was your favorite TA?
Who was my favorite TA for what?
I'm not sure. I was asking for a friend, so I'm assuming he's asking for Mech 3.
Oh, who was my favorite TA for Mech 3 when I took Mech 3?
Yeah.
Oh man, we had some good ones. Well, I know Chris is in here, so he was very helpful. So Chris is wanted to hear his name shout out. He had all the SAE experience. But yeah, no, all the TAs did a good job at getting everything done with kind of what we gave them. They had a lot of things that weren't fun at all. Oh, the other thing for it is if you guys do get to do it live, I would say take advantage of the chance to use the machinery. A lot of the times, the TAs were given all the parts, but they didn't have to do that. Like you do have the opportunity of getting taught how to use the machineries. I even got to use the water jet some, and that was pretty neat. And the water jet's not something that you really get to mess around with very often. So yeah, take advantage of that. They'll show you how to do it, and they'll make sure you're doing it right for the first few ones. But after that, you can kind of take off and do your thing.
All right. So any other questions for the panelists? Okay, well then I'll give you guys the same opportunity that I gave to Lauren, which is if you've got a 1 or 2 minute sort of final thoughts, wrap things up, and then we should be all set. So in any order, if you guys have parting thoughts, we'd love to hear them.
Okay, I guess I can go. Well, first off, I want to say that when I introduced myself, I actually messed up. I actually took your class in the fall, and I took Mech 3 last semester. As far as final thoughts go, I'd say that probably the best part of this class and Mech 3 is the team aspect of it. I remember for Mech 2, like my team started off as strangers, and then we had a couple of nights where we worked till like 4 a.m. in the morning together in the library. That really brought us together, and I'll probably still be friends with those guys a couple years down the road. Now doing this stuff online, I don't know what your guys' experience has been, but I think that as far as teamwork goes, like in the first meeting, being able to shake somebody's hand and look them in the eye, that's pretty important. So doing this online is a little bit of an added obstacle, but as far as Mech 3 goes, I think that might be a little bit changed. And of course, things are definitely out there. Who knows what's going to happen? But I think that there will be more of an opportunity for you guys to meet, even if it's just in the library outside the lab, unofficially. But I'd say that, being able to have like a strong team where you guys like all are friends, that's critical to success in this class and to like actually enjoying it at the end. And also one major difference between when I took Mech 3 and TAing it right now is that in our 2-hour lab period, the team that'd be the time to like actually, we'd meet for the week in lab and we'd kind of brainstorm. Now, since people can't meet in person, that time is more devoted towards getting feedback from Nimi and Noel, and you kind of do the work on your own. So that's a difference. And as far as Mech 3 goes next semester, no, it's a little bit different. But I think that there will be more opportunities for you guys to like build team relationships. And that's my favorite part of the class and probably the most important part of the class. And that's my spiel. Good luck next semester.
So Mech 2 and Mech 3 was my favorite part of mechanical engineering at UF. The team aspect is definitely a huge thing I love about it, but another aspect I really loved about it was just that it's where everything comes together. At UF, I was also on a design team and I did undergraduate research, and it was great, but and you do learn a lot from it, but Mech 2 and Mech 3 is special because everything you've learned so far comes together at the end, and you find yourself using all of it, which is really cool to see. Like it's an opportunity to see how far you've grown over the 4 years. like you'll be recalling things that you never thought you'd ever have to use again, but you do, and it's really very cool. Um, and I'm excited for you guys to experience it. Um, other than that, I don't have much else to add. Is Mech 3 going to be in person in the fall?
Actually, I'm having a couple of private chats that are trying to address that question. So I'm not actually sure. I know that Dr. Nimi. So I guess, and I don't know if any of this is official, but the unofficially classes, the sort of default is that everything is online except for the lab classes, and the lab classes are, and Mech 3 is one of them. It's sort of up to the instructor's discretion. And so I know, for example, John Abbott has been really trying to push and figure out a way to make like the thermal fluids design lab in person, and the logistics are going to be tough, but he's working on it. And I know that Dr. Nimi submitted the request to have at least an in-person option for 4502, but I don't know the status of the request.
Gotcha.
So I know he wants to do it. I'm just not sure if the university has found a way to make, given the number of students that we'd have to shepherd through, it's going to be almost 150 or more. There might not be enough facilities or hours to do it safely for everybody.
Right.
So I'm going to actually follow up, because I know that's some people have the option of waiting until the spring perhaps because they have a spring graduation. And so some people might actually want to wait until the spring if it's not going to be in person in the fall, and you guys need to know what the
Right.
the class is going to be like, so that you can make that decision. So I'm going to follow up with Dr. Nimi over email and see if he's heard anything from the university about in person, but he's at least trying to make it that. So
Gotcha.
so it's still a possibility, I guess, is the best answer.
Gotcha. The reason I asked is just because having it in person is a lot different from doing it online. I feel like I benefited a lot from it being in person as opposed to the students now who have it online. Just because Nimi and Rubiano were there all day long with whiteboards helping you guys out. And I learned a lot from them too. It was a really special experience having a teacher being there always in the lab. So if you have the opportunity to take it in person, I'd recommend it. If you don't, I understand. But I feel like you'd benefit a lot from taking it in person. And other than that, that's all I got.
Yeah, I think I've pretty much said most of everything. Like I said, make sure you really own your projects. That's going to be really useful down the line, especially with internships or interviews, and as well as like Richard mentioned, it's really important to be working on teams, because you're going to keep on working on teams no matter what. So you might as well work on your team abilities, or how to work in a team skills. Those are very important, along with communication. And then for me, the most useful classes that I still believe I had at UF were all the lab sessions, DML, and the mech designs. So definitely, if you're gonna get put effort into specific classes, I would at least make sure to put effort into those classes, so that you can really get the most out of your tuition and everything. So yeah, best of luck, everyone.
All right. So this is our last shot. If anybody has any questions that they want to ask the 4502 survivors, it's now or never. Speak now or forever hold your peace. Okay, so seems like we're good to go. Okay, well, I would like to on behalf of the class, thank you guys, Otto, Joseph, Richard, for showing up and providing all of your insight and um, thoughts and ideas about 4502, and hopefully the this 4501 class, they're a very good class, but they're also a little skittish of talking on Zoom. So it's not you, it's them. Um, but yeah, we really appreciate you guys taking time out to meet with us and talk with us and kind of give a sense of what the future might look like for these guys as they move forward into 4502. But if there are no further questions, we can wrap it up about 10 minutes early. And I'll be in my normal 12:30 office hours. So if you guys, want to ask questions that are related to the class, you see me in about 25 minutes. The one thing that I did want to say, before I log everybody out, is I'd mentioned signing up for the design reviews next week and the following week, and one of you realized as you were signing up that I accidentally clicked the wrong box when I created those appointments, and I clicked the box that put you guys in your RER groups and not in your major project groups, and so just to avoid confusion and trouble, I just went in as we were talking into Canvas and erased all the sign-up slots, because you would have ended up signing up for basically in the wrong groups. So as soon as we get off the call here, I'll jump back into Canvas and put put all those appointments back up, and I'll make sure that I check the box so that they are your major project groups and not your RER groups. I hadn't even realized when I made those appointments in the beginning that was an option. And only to discover that the default was the option that was not the one that I wanted. So I will make that change pretty quickly here after class, and I'll send out a message to the entire class to let you know that those new appointment slots have been created and are up in Canvas, so you can jump in and sign up for them. I'm sorry about that. I didn't even realize that it was gonna. Yeah, the RER groups were even still a thing. And all of a sudden they took over my my calendar. So anyway, so I'll make that fix and I'll let you guys know, and you can jump in and sign up. But if there's nothing else, then I think we can wrap up. So again, panelists, thanks for spending an hour with us this morning, and we will maybe see you at the final poster presentation in a couple of weeks. The entire department, in fact, the entire state of Florida at this point is getting invited. So it's going to be a big deal. Lots of alums have already RSVP. There's going to be a lot of people there. So anyway, we'll make sure that you guys get an invitation so that you can come and grill these guys on their designs.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, no, that's it's I think the more the merrier. It's having not too many people show up for the poster symposium makes it kind of not very fun and sort of stale, but if a lot of people come, then it becomes a really neat dynamic event. It goes what's the term? Viral. It goes viral. And then like people just who weren't even like planning to go just get sucked into it, and it becomes a cool event. That's I think to some extent what happened last semester when we did it online. So anyway, okay. So I guess we'll wrap it up there. I'm gonna hit the stop record button.